thank you so much for coming. I know it was such a nice day out today, and you all came out here, so thank you. Darren's the librarian here at the museum school. He wanted me to tell you that you can come to the museum school whenever you want, to the library, to use the facilities that we have here and look at the books. And we are always having events here too. So Julia and I run a platform called New Body, which is what's bringing Suzy here tonight. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, and what that is it's kind of a platform that allows people of color, artists, musicians, makers, or documentarians, whatever, get to Boston and perform and do cool stuff. So Suzy's a part of that.
And the next event we have coming up, that's part of New Body, and I'm passing like a sign-up sheet around so you can get more like emails about that, is a friend, Domingo Castillo. He's coming to do a lecture on Low B. And then after that in March, we have Dark Matter coming, who are two spoken word queer South Asian poets from New York. Well, they live in New York now, they're not from New York. So, okay. I think Suzy's ready for you. And if you have any questions afterwards, you can talk to us.
Friday night, I woke alone to get the feeling right. We started making out, and she took off my pants, but then I turned on TV, and that's about the time she walked away from me.
So this is from the original CD that I had, and you can tell because it's all skipped. So, hi everyone, I'm Suzy X. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm 24 and I'm wearing the clothes that I wore when I was 13. Now, I still got it, or maybe I just like never left puberty, I can't tell. It's kind of hard when you're like 5 feet tall. But yeah, thanks for coming to this event. I'm going to talk a little bit about life, and then I guess some of the zines that I made, and then I'm going to do a reading for you. And then I'll have like, we can do a Q&A, we can have like a nice feelings session. Eventually I want to hear from you all, especially like really mortifying stories that you might have, because I love those. So yeah, but anyway, I'm gonna wing it. So it all started somewhere in Miami, Florida, which is where I grew up, and I lived there until I was 12 years old. And I think around the time that I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, which is like middle of bumfuck nowhere compared to Miami, I think I really started getting into like punk and everything like that. And I think it also coincided with the process of like my own assimilation away from Latino culture, at least the culture that my parents had, and that of American culture. Although it was kind of funny because my entrance into American culture was through this fringe, known as like rock music. So I've always been I've always felt like really displaced in many different ways, and that's generally what I write about. My parents are, my dad is Cuban, but he was born in New Jersey, and my mom is from Belize. And language was like one of the things that definitely, language is one of the things that people actually still hold to this day as like a standard to which like people can prove their authenticity. And I don't speak Spanish anymore. That's like a big subject in my writing. And I've gone back and forth, like, should I learn it? I could definitely like connect more to people, or like, is it, or do I just like not want to learn it again because it's like a colonist language, as much as English is, so I'm like, well, what the hell do I do? My racial background is, like my mom is Mayan and Black and English. And my dad is like almost entirely Spanish and Chinese. So my family has like this really wide-reaching, I guess, span across the world, and we have like lots of people living in different places and who have like different experiences, even though we're all like in the same family. So I've often found that I also cannot relate to a lot of what exists in Latino literature, because I think a lot of people write about these things from a very like monocultural perspective, where you might have like, I mean, I've read so many pieces by people who are either like from Mexico, or they're from like Colombia, or they're from Puerto Rico, and both their parents are like from these places. And meanwhile, my house is like very divided. My mom speaks Belizean Creole, and which is actually a lot like Jamaican patois, and my dad speaks Spanish. So like, I got a little bit of everything, but honestly, it just made my life easier speaking in English. And so the reason why I really started writing zines was because I wanted to write things that I would want to read, I guess, when I was a teen. And I would write a lot of fiction as a teen, but I don't have any of that anymore. It's like somewhere lost in time, lost in like a floppy disk somewhere in a landfill. It's like all my fictional stories that weren't really fictional, because of course, like, you know, with my big ass ego, like they were all indirectly about me. I went to see a psychic, and she was like, wow, you have a really defined solar plexus, and I'm like, no, you just mean I'm like actually like all about me. You're being nice, but I get it. So I just I stopped writing fiction for a while because I got really engrossed in this thing. This is one of my diaries from my teenage years, to get a closer view, I guess, or as close as I could possibly provide you with this thing. This is a relic from 2002 and 2003, a little bit of 2003, but you see I've got like a corn sticker, and I've got all these like, I got like a Nirvana quote and a New Found Glory quote and stuff, and like, this was such a weird, I mean, as if it wasn't weird enough with my parents like not really being like American, at least not to other people. It was like bad enough that I like was a goth. So I was already in this like family full of immigrants. As a goth, I couldn't really talk to other goths because in Jacksonville, where I was a teenager, a lot of them were actually really white supremacist. So I often just like wrote in this thing a lot more than I really like made friendships. So that's why I still like have this, because this is like one of my longest running friendships ever. I'm rambling. Let's see here. But anyway, given that I'm talking about coming from a bunch of different places at once, as like a second generation Latina who is like active in, I guess, the punk music community still to this day, I'm starting to, I guess, analyze the position of like myself and also like other second generation Latinos who aren't necessarily tied to like an origin country, but we're more tied to like cultural symbols. And I think that it functions that way in many different subcultures, whether you're like, you know, a goth, or whether you like country music or whatever, or whether you go to art school. Like there's different cultural symbols and significances that we like latch onto when we're like part of a place or a thing. And for me, I was never really part of any place because I constantly just like would move around a lot. And I mean, between Jacksonville and Miami, and now New York, which I've lived in for 6.5 years. So what I'm thinking a lot about now is like how is it, especially for like people who are, you know, the children of immigrants, or just like in general part of a displaced community, or just like a migrant one. where do we find our identity? Because I don't find my identity in, you know, Cuba or Belize, which is where my parents are from, but which I'm constantly kind of prompted to answer to just because I just don't look like a white American, at least not to most people. So I'm thinking a lot about actually being more tied to like a diaspora than a nationality. And I also think about that in terms of like music, like thinking, and it's so funny, I was like, I just had this, I don't know, breakthrough while I was like archiving my journal for the next zine. You know, I mean, when you're a part of a subculture, there's always like this talk of like posers, and like there are these constant tests to see like, oh, who's like really authentic, who is the real Slim Shady, we want to know. But I think that this is like a running theme in like a lot of different contexts. It's not just the punk community that's like full of assholes who want to like check your cred. I've also encountered it among many different people, including like white people who actually don't know shit about Latin culture, or like different Latin cultures, because in reality, like even the label Latino, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and talking to some people about it on Tumblr, because of course. But thinking of that, like even Latino is like more of it's like a geographical category, you know, we hardly share the same culture. But my family is like completely opposite. They don't tell very many stories. There's a lot of things that they keep in the closet, including the actual like other queers in my family, because I am one of them. And yeah, we like to keep that in the closet. They also like to keep like many different things that probably shouldn't be kept away from like their children, you know. And there's like big gaps in like history and family history that I just don't know. And also there's some that we can't help, like the fact that my like great-grandfather was Mayan, but like nobody knows anything about him because apparently, my grandma like doesn't talk about him at all. She doesn't really want to, and I guess there's like reasons behind that. And not everyone should be like forced to disclose shit about family members that they like cannot stand, because I don't blame them. But but at the same time, I'm like constantly like searching, like what is the root of this? Like where the hell did some of my features come from? Why am I so short? And but there's like unsolved mysteries in my family, and I think like a lot of people deal with this. And in my experience growing up, I think what was often a source of frustration for me was that a lot of my classmates, at least when I lived in Jacksonville, most of them were white, and they could trace their lineage back to, the 1700s, or even further than that if they really wanted to. But I couldn't go far because, as many of you know, like lots of stuff, either it isn't documented when it's about people of color, or it's destroyed strategically. And I do think that my family like purposefully like kind of erases different people from our family histories. Like the fact that I didn't know, where a lot of my family members came from until I was maybe a bit older, and my dad was like, oh yeah, like your great-grandpa's Chinese and your other one's Mayan. And I'm like, when was anyone gonna tell me this? And then he's like, oh yeah, like nobody really knew them. They just died, And so a lot of us have to deal with this obscurity because people don't document, and I have been documenting since I can remember, everything. I like keep all my like silly old clothes. So I just am keeping a zine of my own documentations. I'm like keeping my own archives, and my Molgoth project, which is called the Molgoth Chronicles, which I basically ripped off of Anne Rice. Vampire Chronicles. So my project, the Molgoth Chronicles, is a living archive that I'm keeping on Tumblr right now, where I'm actually blogging my diary entries according to the dates that I wrote them 10 years ago. And they have to be exactly 10 years ago. So like, say right now you wouldn't be able to read an entry from summer 2004 because it has not been a decade yet, and I just like refuse to let it out there. But I'm also trying to adapt like old forms of like archiving and bring them in, like, I guess, integrate them into like newer mediums like the internet. And it is really freaking weird, like the way that I wrote in like my private journal and the way that I ended up writing in my live journal when I was like 14, and how my voice was like completely different because one was for an audience and the other was like for me. And I'm thinking a lot about like writing styles and like changing like words that are being invented, or just the way that people write now is like completely different from how they wrote 10 years ago. If you ever read like a newspaper, and then, I don't know, you go and read like BuzzFeed or something, obviously they're very different. BuzzFeed is like, ooh, animal gif. And maybe a sentence here or there. But I'm definitely like, I did the journal thing. I kept a physical diary for a very long time, and now all my archives are on the internet. I'm wondering if this is a bad idea or not. So I've started turning them into zines just in case. Just in case the worst happens and Tumblr shuts down. Would it be the worst though? I don't know. I could do without it. Now that I've rambled a lot, I think I'm going to do a reading. And actually, before I do this reading, God, tangents upon tangents, I would like you to think about, because see, the running theme for me, aside from like not belonging or not having any kind of like stationary place where I'm from, I think like one of the reasons why I love doing this, or why I love reading my terribly embarrassing teen journals, is because of how incredibly tense everything was, and how being a teen, or I don't even know if it's just being a teen at all, is so like wrought with tension. It's just constant tension. And it's funny because I'm reading things that I wrote 10 years ago, and I still identify with a lot of things, like, you know, feeling totally out of place and like entering a room and like kind of shrinking like I always did. And this time it's not because I'm a teen, and I used to think it was because I was a teen, but no, I realized maybe it's because in certain spaces I just like stand out a little bit more. Maybe this tension just like doesn't go away if you happen to be at odds with, you know, the people in power in a given place and time. So thinking of puberty and like the fact that everyone's like, oh yeah, puberty is like a really awkward time. I'm like, well, I don't know. It kind of never ended for me. I still have to worry about seeing my bullies at shows, you know, or I still have to worry about running into people who've like done me or my friends harm in different places. And I still find myself like shrinking away to the side of the wall, you know, to just kind of like glare or like hide sometimes, and I'm like, God, am I regressing, or is it that I'm just kind of like pulling all of this stuff out? I can't tell when I'm reading my journal as if I'm like going back in time, or if I'm just kind of like just pulling all the shit out of my closet, you know, like if I'm cleaning house in a way. That's kind of how it feels to me. So once I'm done with my reading, I want you all to, we're gonna have a joint story time where everyone, not everyone if you don't want to, you can talk about either your most like embarrassing moment, you just like release that embarrassing moment, or you talk about maybe like tensions that have not gone away as you've grown up, you know. So think about that, just like put it in your mind, tuck it in. And here we go. So I'm reading from my zine, Chronicles of an 8th Grade Molgoth. It's the first volume. And I'm going to be in character. I regret nothing. Okay. All right. Dear reader, what you are about to read are some intimate and totally banal details about my life between 2002 and 2003. I kept these in a series of composition books covered in cartoon dolls, stickers, and Kurt Cobain quotes. In an attempt to destigmatize what was and is often regarded as one's lowest point of existence, the 13th year of one's life, I started archiving my diary entries from this year online, in real time or in chronological order according to the date I wrote each entry 10 to 11 years ago. I'll give you the blog address when we're done. All names have been changed, or some have been obscured by the original code names that I assigned to people in my class as a precaution against prying eyes. I apologize in advance. Hey. Hey now. Hey. Oh, you know what? I'm going to leave you with a little cartoon that I did for my diaries. Oh, yeah. I make art. I draw things. I don't just, dress up in my old clothes and talk. So this one is... So I actually legit have ADD. I apologize. I jump around from place to place because that's just how I am. That's my, that's me. That's my being. This character over here is named Corn Dude. I never once used his real name in my diaries, and for a while I completely forgot about it until I ran into this girl who I used to go to church with. And yeah, that's me. Or at least what I wanted to look like. That's like Sailor Scout me. If I was a Sailor Scout, that would be me. Okay. So, I apologize in advance for anything offensive I wrote in here, i.e. instances of racism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism, things that I could not find names for until college, which is a serious, disparity, or it's just a serious problem that I couldn't name any of these things that happened in my life until I paid a shit ton of money to go to school. Anyway, so middle school is a terrible place that definitely encouraged all of these terrible ideologies. I won't pretend that I never accepted any of those things to get by. I have no idea why you're even reading this or listening to me or why you're here. My 13-year-old self would probably hate me for even doing this, but thanks for listening. So, when I started this diary in August 2002, I was 12 years old and 13 in September. This was me when I was 13. And I had been living in Jacksonville, Florida with my mom and my super Anglo stepdad from Indiana for almost a year. Before that, I lived in Miami, and I still visited my dad there every month. Also, when I started this in August 2002, I had just broken up with a self-proclaimed goth infantile, which we would just call a baby goth, because why? My ex-internet boyfriend, who was a former classmate of mine at South Miami Middle, he will only be referred to as Internet X. I prided myself on my manga drawing skills, even though I'm not Japanese. And then I had a little cat emoji next to it. My mom made me go to church and join a Girl Scout troop, but I secretly loved both. I had to constantly act like I didn't. So I started this journal on my first day of art school in Jacksonville. Okay, get ready. 13-year-old voice activate. August 26, 2002, listening to the Foo Fighters. Hello, I've waited here for you ever long. Not really, it's only my favorite song ever. This is my first entry on my first day at my new school downtown, and it's okay, I guess. I have to take the bus home from school. Then on my ride to school with my stepdad, I have a scenic, beautiful view, sarcasm, of the factories and cranes at the seaport and all the homeless people. I hate this town. pop punk lyric right there. Anyway, some kid who's probably a foot taller than me asked me to go to the dance with him next Friday. I laughed and said I don't talk to strangers. I saw him in the bus loading zone later and he waved at me, so I flicked him off. Now everyone thinks I'm a bitch. Here's to a great start. One more problem though. My ex, the internet boyfriend, is trying to grab my attention again. He's trying to be all sweet and stuff on AOL Instant Messenger. And now that it's my birthday this weekend, 13, woohoo, I'm going to visit my dad in Miami, where I will meet up with my old best friend at Sunset Place. Internet ex-boyfriend will possibly be there. We're still friends, but he sometimes talks like we're still together. Last Thursday, we got fake married in a chat room, LOL, and it was all very funny until he asked about our honeymoon. Are we gonna have our fun in the bed? He asked. I knew it was only a joke, so I said, LOL, okay. But then he told me how much he seriously wanted to marry me, and that was the one reason why he really wanted to grow up. Eep! I don't know what to do if I see him at Sunset Place this weekend and he tries to make a move on me. Okay, August 30th, 2002, listening to A Perfect Circle. Oh, internet ex-boyfriend thinks he's such a stud. Do you know what he did? He sent me a stupid little email asking me to make a cartoon doll of him and signed it, thanks, kisses, love ya, bye. Well, I talked to my friend Shannon around 6 p.m. She told me that he's going out with Sabrina. The scary little thing he cheated on me with over the summer. And you know what? The day that he sent me his little love note was the day that they started going out. No. He disgusts me. Thank God I'll never marry him. Tonight, I fly down to Miami and I better not see him there. Oh shit, there's a picture that goes with this. Oh. You know what? No, I'll skip. There's another one. Okay, I'm gonna skip this part. Da, 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 da. Elevator music. Let's see. Okay. 9/11/2002. Listening to Less Than Jake. Oh man. I nearly cried this morning watching all the little kids on the news without moms or dads. Grrr. The only thing that made me insensitive about today, though, was that damn country song. They play it on the morning announcements. Excessively, LOL. This boy who sits next to me started singing along. 'Cause I'm proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free. And then I bust out laughing and it was terrible. And I wish I didn't have to go to religious education today either. It's so pointless if we already go to church. Steph was being a snotty bitch as usual, but I started talking to this dude with a Korn shirt. Some other newbie rock lover joined in, dissing both Korn Dude and I by saying Slipknot sucked. I think not. So, Korn Dude and I protested until Josh changed the subject to Incubus. I had their CD, but I said they were way overplayed these days. Korn Dude and I just talked about Marilyn Manson for a while before we went home. I wonder how I never noticed him before. September 16, 2002, listening to Nirvana. Journal, I found you! Oh crap, I thought I'd lose you to a nosy 7th grade minion from hell. Today was miserable. I just wish I knew what it was like to feel loved instead of lusted after. Well, nothing a little Nirvana can't fix. Let's see. September 20th, 2002. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Crap, my parents caught me on the computer today. I've been grounded and I haven't been able to talk to my friends. This sucks. That's all I got to say about that. My mom made me join a Girl Scout troop because she thinks I'm doing drugs. Ha ha ha. I went to the first meeting last night. LMAO. I got up to kill an ant, but I dropped all my papers, stomped on the ant, and then slipped on my Jenko jeans and toppled over a chair. I was the only one laughing. Classic. Anyway, thankfully, Sam joined the troop as well, so I'm not totally alone. We split up into groups based on the meal that we'll be cooking at the campout. Some girls whose names start with A formed a group of their own and kept giving us dirty looks, especially the bitch in the purple shirt. And when we were done announcing our chores, she said, "Bye." Ha! I'll be damned. Someone's getting extra garlic salt in her quesadilla. September 28, 2002. I'm at the campsite right now, LMAO. The whole day, we've been praying to run into dudes and chewing gum because we're not supposed to chew it. We got into a fight, not physically, with the triple A's, the girl or the group whose members have names that all start with A, who first made everyone sick with their weird fudge and gummy worm pudding, and then attacked my bunk with silly string. We put on a talent show around the bonfire in which I performed as Brody from the Distillers and Lauren as Britney Spears. It was a skit about a brawl between punk and pop, persistence and plastic. When we walked back to our bunk, though, we found a swarm of palmetto bugs. The triple A's had the same problem, but Ashley A, aka the bitch in the purple shirt, wanted to stick it out. My bunk and the two preppy A's escaped to the unit house, and all is well. Now that we're all sleeping in the same room, I think we can all get along just fine. Okay. Speaking, okay, new entry I'm gonna skip. October 3rd, 2002, listening to Kitty. Last night at CC, my friend Ashweed, as I'm now calling her, haha, totally interrupted my tiny romantic experience with Corn Dude. Grr! She decided to sit between him and I in the prayer circle, but we talked afterwards, and his stupid friends decided to shoot their little laser beams at my more popular parts. Real mature. Corn Dude muttered, "Hey man, stop. I'm trying to talk to someone here, okay?" So they scurried away. I wrote a poem about Avril Lavigne. Skater boys may find her cool when her sorry ass should have stayed in school. True to her title, the poser queen. Complicated is Avril Lavigne. And underneath I actually wrote, brilliance, sheer brilliance. Okay. October 10th, 2002, listening to Deftones. I wrote a poem today. It's probably the deepest thing I've ever written. Broken glass slices my toes and my feet. Feels like fire, crimson flames on which I walk, crimson memories which burn me hard and burn me slow. I am the mind's candle, I am the waxy shape, but I am in no shape, admired by none, chased after by many, chased by you, only you, who dares call my name, whispering, whispering. I always seek your voice, ocean green eyes, twinkling stars dancing as I stare back, never a glare, only sight, enclosed into your account. Of love lost, always found, always something missing, always something I look forward to. Your thoughts flowing down your lips, swirling, twirling to my ears, like music, chaos. Such pandemonium increases my temptation to shut the world out and swallow the key to my door. I will lock all out, and I will only think of them. Figures of authority who will restlessly nag until I see the light again. With these crimson memories, I will burn it all down. Ashes to ashes, dust to disgust. I collect all their lectures, burn them too I must, gather all my teardrops and soak the flames down. Farewell to these great burdens, problems I never solved. And you see me, so melancholy. Why ask when you can just help? Yeah, thanks to your time. I'm never alone, I'm always lost, never complete, even with you. I will stroll by myself, thank you very much, towards the path to this strange new world. Come with me, then again, if you'd like. The place's name is quite a mouthful. Say it, feel it, breathe it in. adolescence. Maybe I can read it in English class on Monday? At least I hope they'd understand it, LOL. October 18th, 2002, listening to Korn. The selfish nature of the male specimen can be unbearable sometimes. October 19th, 2002. Listening to Sublime. Oh, thank God. My mom finally took me to the mall today to get me some stuff for winter. I needed a sweater, so she bought me this big black Sublime hoodie. I also talked her into getting me this long-sleeved black shirt with black and red striped sleeves. Zip them off the shirt and wear them alone. Genius. I was bored today and I thought about my ideal guy. One, he must listen to rock music. That includes punk, hardcore, metal, grunge, ska, garage, no pop music. Ever. I don't have a preference for hair color, although I do like blue or green eyes, and he's gotta be super funny. I don't mind if he wears glasses, but he can't be too much taller than me because I'm really short. Artistic, but not obnoxious. And definitely not my internet ex, who stopped calling me since he got a new girlfriend. Thank goodness. My Halloween costume, or so I hoped. Let's see. October 22nd, 2002. 10 days until I get my internet back. Yay! I've been planning my costume for Halloween. I want to go as some sort of dark medieval maiden, or whatever you might call gothic people, and it won't have to be all black. Let's see. October 25th, 2002. Meg dragged me to the snack line again, and there we saw those skater boys who hate me again. I also met a couple of new dudes. They all joined us in the snack line. They were talking about us, and we were loudly talking about them. There was one guy who just stared, and I didn't say much, but I'll call him Cool Dude, and you'll see why in a second. Hoodie Dude started talking about the patches on my purse. The dude in the less than Jake shirt didn't like any of them, but Cool Dude pushed his way through and complimented my Slipknot patch. Hoodie Dude dissed them and called them fags with masks. But I protested. Mudvayne and Murder Dolls do the same thing and they definitely do not suck. Cool Dude agreed. While less than Jake Dude was busy making Meg laugh, Cool Dude and I stepped aside and had a long conversation about a perfect circle tool and Maynard James Keenan being awesome. Now, that is so rare. I don't know anyone else at this school with such good taste. Gosh, I hope he isn't a 7th grader. I have a small suspicion that he is a bit taken with me, and his blue eyes are so beautiful. I want to put eyeliner on them. So. I'm gonna skip that shit show. Okay. October 28, 2002, listening to Hole. My stepdad wouldn't let me get my gothic dress. He thinks it'll encourage me to dress weirder. Crap! So now I'm wearing an old ball gown and tiara and going as Courtney Love. Okay. All right, November 1st, 2002, listening to The Get Up Kids. Oh my God, last night fucking rocked. Sammy and I terrorized a bunch of neighborhood boys, laughing at their costumes and throwing candy around. I was Courtney Love, of course, and surprisingly, lots of kids got it. My mom wasn't too happy with my costume, though, and warned me about heroin. Duh! Anyway, I brought my homemade guitar that I made for science class, and we walked around singing Malibu, and then I got sillier and made up songs about suing Dave Grohl on MTV. Between some songs, I shouted, "I love you, Cleveland!" It was so good. Oh, man. November 21st, 2002, listening to The Transplants. Something tells me SpongeBob Boy likes me. He's been really flirty and talking to me a lot lately. Sometimes he just turns around and smiles at me randomly. His best friend turned to me in health class today and asked, "Suzanne, what would you say if I told you that he liked you?" And I asked, "I don't know, why?" "Because he's my buddy," he said. I caught SpongeBob Boy staring at us and he turned around instantly. Last night I was also asked out by AZN Hottie. So I went to this church and it was like almost entirely Filipinos and Puerto Ricans, and then it was like Porn Dude, his brother, and then this other skateboarder who were like the only white people there. But there was this one guy who everyone called AZN Hottie because that was his AIM screen name. Just a little backstory. After the Christmas pageant rehearsal, the little kids asked AZN Hottie, pointing at me, "Hey, is she your bitch?" AZN Hottie put his arm around me and said, "Yeah, she's my girlfriend." I shoved him off and yelled, "Get off of me! I'm not your girlfriend, I'm definitely not your bitch." I guess I didn't sound serious enough for him, so he continued. As the little kids giggled, damn little kids, I scurried away from him. Confused, he asked, "Why are you running away?" And I replied, "Because I'm not your girlfriend!" Later on, AZN Hottie plopped down next to me as I waited for my parents to pick me up. So, what they said back there, did you take it as an insult or as a compliment? I sharply said, "As an insult, they called me a bitch." I paused. "I just don't like you like that." He looked half angered and half sad. "So you don't want to go out with me?" he asked. I shook my head. Then he got really mad, stood up and said, "Well, you're not supposed to hurt my feelings, you know." And then he stormed off. I ignored his temporary fit of rage because I know he'll get over it soon. All guys should just understand that there comes a time for rejection. They honestly should. November 23rd, 2002, listening to Blink-182. I thought about SpongeBob Boy again today. He's been talking to me a lot more lately and asking me about guys that I talk about with Kelly sometimes. Why does he even care? He's cute, but I don't even know why he'd like me in the first place. I'm not white, I don't have straight teeth or blonde hair, I'm not a prep. My alter egos are Brody Armstrong and Debbie Harry, and his alter egos are Mark Hoppus, SpongeBob, and Patrick Star. Also, I'm a Catholic and he's a Baptist. Is he even allowed to like me? December 1st, 2002, listening to At the Drive-In. My Thanksgiving was quite interesting, or as they say in Miami, Thanksgiving. My dad took me and my sister to Uncle Papo's house in Tampa, and we hung out with all my dad's cousins and uncles. My sister kept calling everyone Primo because she heard all the men calling each other Primo. I tried to correct her and say, "No, it's Primo, and it means cousin." But I gave up. She just kept calling everyone in her family Primo. She actually did not know what it meant. And I feel bad for speaking terrible Spanish, but I felt really bad for her. Anyway, so then I hung out with this 15-year-old girl named Casey who said she liked MXPX, so I thought she was cool, until she started hating on my stupid preppy cousin Nico. I thought that she was punk. While she was pretending to be interested in Nico's short and boring stories about being in the Navy, I nearly hurled. So, I was walking over to the living room where Uncle Adrian was playing Gypsy Kings on his acoustic guitar. But then my dad got really drunk and he had to ruin it by yelling, "Oye, dame free bird!" Uncle Adrian just gave him the worst face ever. Before winter break. It's actually really funny, this photo. So I had algebra class and all of the women of color in the classroom just decided to have our own table. And we called it the diapers table. Yeah. So here's the diapers table, and we're all biffles until like lunchtime, and we all like sat with our respective friends. But here, it was like the Rainbow Coalition, and we were really proud of it. Which is like kind of funny, but I still talk to all of these women now, and they're really awesome. December 18th, 2002, listening to Hometown Hero. It's officially winter break. I'm on the bus home now. My handwriting might be sloppy, but I think I have a new crush. At lunch today, I hung out with Cool Dude. We talked the entire time. We talked about metal, our favorite radio shows, and we even got into the subject of his ass. LOL. We were flirting with each other big time until my friends came back from the lunch line. Then we had to tone it down. He said he liked that I wore fishnets under my ripped jeans. I said I liked his tube socks and his DC skate shoes. I called him a little white boy, and then he play slapped my cheek really softly though, because he thought I was making fun of him. Maybe I was. I play slapped him back, and the bell rang, and we continued slapping each other until we got back to my class. Whew, I think I really do like him. You know what? I think I like Cool Dude all along anyway. He's so sweet, we like the same music, and he plays guitar. Fuck all those guys from church, they're boring anyway. Okay. Thank you for sitting through that. I don't know why you did.
That ruled. Do you need the projector on?
Maybe not.
Okay.
Let's see. When does this thing end? When are we done?
Whenever you are bored, I guess.
Whenever I'm bored. So, like I was saying earlier, I obsessively document everything. I think the second part of that journal gets way better, but for now, I'm like putting this out into the universe and sending this zine to strangers who probably would never figure out who Corn Dude was anyway, so I don't think it matters. But in a way, it's like a form of purging. I wrote my first zine. This is my first zine called Malcriada, which means spoiled brat in Spanish, or just really badly raised kid. And which was really funny because my parents constantly called me a malcriada like all the time, and I was like, what does that say about you? And they'd be like, like shut up! But anyway, so this zine is like way fucking intense. But I was reading a lot. I was like going back and reading some of the like Latina literature that I was reading when I was a teen, which kind of like helped me feel a little more comfortable with my identity. And I read like a lot of like Sandra Cisneros, like Julia Alvarez, Cristina Garcia, and like these are all women who have like written tons of hard-hitting novels that like are critically acclaimed as like, you know, this is like canon for Latinas and whatever, but like I think the common thread in all of that literature was just like grappling with shame. Whether it was like based in, you know, Catholic shame, which I think like I obviously am still dealing with, or, you know, shame about like where you're from, the fact that like my family will be like, you know, 10 times as brown as me and be like, oh no, we're Spanish. You know, it's stuff like that where they're like ashamed of their roots, for all these like really shitty reasons that were pretty much like drilled into all of our heads as we grew up. And I think that part of, you know, why I'm doing my diary project, and also why I wrote this perzine, basically talking about like assimilation and also like abuses that I've experienced by a family that I still like really love, and trying to like grapple with that, is because like I think that stigma is actually like very violent. I think that the way that people use stigma, or at least deploy stigma against things, keeps us from talking about things, and also just like kind of addles us with like all of this baggage, and you just like carry it around with you all the time, and you get really fucking sick of it, and eventually you need some kind of release. So I'm not going to read too many stories in here. I mean, some of them are kind of funny, and some some of them I still feel like kind of scared of just by like having it out there and just like admitting these things. But I decided that, you know, I've read so much Latina and Latino literature about that just like centered on like shame and, like I was saying before, like tension and not belonging. And I think by putting it out there, I kind of just like deal with it. It's kind of like an open wound. Like all of my zines are just these open, festering wounds. That sounds like a Malkoff poem. But in a way, just to kind of like get used to that, like get used to being more open and being more vulnerable is a way to say that I just like reject the stigma. I don't think that I think obviously there's like a time and a place, but I can't not talk about things that have happened to me and that have like framed my worldview or like the person that I am. And I don't know. I think I'll just read something.
Can I make a question?
Of course.
Okay, so I'm curious about when you realize that the stigma or when you feel that your identity was there but it was not there, like when you feel that, like when you move to New York or like when you move the scene and you feel like more Latinos and more people like trying, like a community like trying to rebuild like their identities, but how
Yeah.
was that for you? Or when was that?
I think it keeps happening. It keeps happening in different ways. The most recent, I think, that I felt that again was when I came out to my grandmother on the Cuban side of my family, and they're extremely homophobic, and we have like a couple of nuns in our family who are like rumored to be lesbians, had like mysterious friendships with women, but because they got so much shit for it, they just ended up joining a convent. And but I told my grandmother, because I can't lie to my grandmother, like she, I've been really close to her like my entire life, but she said, you know, you can't tell anyone, or you can't be part of this family. Like everyone's gonna be really, like really heartbroken, and it will like kill your dad. And so I thought about it, I guess in relation to the queer community and how I know like a lot of Latinos who like are part of the, or actually really like not enough, not in my part of Brooklyn. There aren't enough, because I think there's also like one thing about Brooklyn is that actually like a lot of the people who live there are gentrifiers, including myself. And a lot of us were displaced in ways where we like just couldn't go back home after, like I went to New York for college. I went to Parsons and it was terrible. and then I went to Eugene Lang College, and like that was a little bit better, but still terrible. But I couldn't leave. I thought of going to Miami again, but the economic climate was terrible, and I would have to live in a one-bedroom apartment with my dad and my grandmother, and that wouldn't have been fun. But there are a lot of people I know who are Latinos and who are not from Brooklyn, who just kind of stayed because they are completely like detached from their family, because they made the conscious decision to choose, you know, to be out than to be part of this like unit. And I'm scared. Like I'm still not out to most of my family, because I still hold on to a lot of like things about my dad's family's culture. My mom's family, they're fucking chill. They're like, I mean, we have like tons of gay people on my mom's side of the family, and they're like so relaxed, and they're all like, it's great. I have mentors on that side of the family if I wanted, but I have to be a completely different person when I go to Miami and see my dad's side of the family. And it sucks, because I want to feel like I'm a part of something, and in a way I still deep down like and kind of vying for this like cred, you know, this kind of authenticity when it comes to being a real Cuban. And I want to be in touch with my family, and I want to be able to go to like Noche Buena and like have like tons of food with everyone and like argue about really silly, inconsequential things. But, you know, at what expense? And now, this is like it's been a completely like new thing for me, just because I'd never felt like so, like I already felt like I was losing touch when I moved to Jacksonville with my mom and her Anglo husband. But it was, I guess, the feeling of like feeling like dissociated with that kind of doubled when I was told, you know, you either keep it away from us or, you know, we'll stay away from you.
Because I'm Latina too, but I'm from Brazil. It's different.
Yeah.
But also, I've been seeing how your generation is trying to keep it like the hybrid.
Yeah.
Or this kind of sense of be yourself with your part of your culture better. Okay.
Yeah, no, I totally get it because, and one of the reasons I left Parsons was because it was very clear that it was a school specifically for the elite, and I was there on scholarship, and my scholarship didn't cover my supplies or my housing. So I worked 3 jobs all throughout college just to stay in New York and retain the scholarship that I had. But nobody else was really in that position, or not very many people. We had like a student group around like low-income students, and that was one thing that like really got me. I was like, how do I make these kinds of things accessible? Like right now, I'm doing a lot of comics and stuff. I work for this website called Rookie, which is like a teen girls website. I blog a lot, and that's like how I'm reaching people for the most part. But also like zines, I think are like definitely making a comeback. I volunteer at the Rock Camp for Girls, and we have like a huge like camper population from Brooklyn, and it's like it's pretty cool because we teach them how to make like a basic zine or whatever, and then sometimes I've like passed on my zines at least to like the older girls because I can't give something like this or even that to like a 9-year-old. But in terms of like, you mean like talking about things like social justice
like
just making art available?
Yeah. Just to make your art available. It's like it's pretty much like I feel like the U.S. is more like the independent scene doesn't have any money, and you guys are doing a really nice way to distribute the way to make art like in punk scene. The punk do you yourself scene is really like you see like every time, you know, scenes and bands and puppeteers and everything like not like just. And they don't have money. You don't have money, but exist.
Yeah.
So otherwise, like in Brazil, we don't have much that scene anymore because it's so much money put on the art scene. So you're very institutionalized, and you're very like dependent on public money. And, but
Miami has the exact same problem.
But I don't know. Like I've been seeing in New York, like people like struggling to. And I think it's I don't know the next step or the future of this kind of independent. I don't know how to say, but this art like make more like sustainable. You know, like it's awesome to see like getting old and getting paid a little and survive for that a little. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I think that's like a really good question. And the thing about New York is that DIY culture has it actually has like several, in fact, many different hubs, because, you know, there's so many people in New York that there's like separate DIY cultures for, I don't know, like I'm thinking, you know, there's a DIY culture for like moms in this fancy neighborhood in Brooklyn called Park Slope. You know, they have a DIY culture technically, even though they have a ton of money and make like, you know, cute little bonnets and things. But I mean, that's cool if that's what you're into. But, you know, whereas on the Lower East Side, there's like a huge Latino community that's DIY, and they have like their own space, and part of it is also depending on the communities that they serve. Like, another issue in Brooklyn specifically, I don't want to talk about Brooklyn too much, but is that there's also a DIY culture in Williamsburg, but it's almost exclusively made up of white American people. And they don't care about inclusivity. They just don't, they don't even want to try because they're like, it's about the art. And I'm like, well, if it's all the same looking people making the same looking art, and like, I'm a little concerned that that these kinds of people have like taken up this entire neighborhood, and they're also getting a lot of attention for the art that comes out of Williamsburg, whereas you have like really thriving communities in other places that also do DIY stuff. It's just, you know, people don't pay attention, or they don't even want to reach out. You know, like there's like a huge Caribbean population in Bed-Stuy, and they have like, they do DIY. Is it called DIY or is it not? You know, why, who gets to identify as like DIY? Because for some people, saying that it's DIY is like this really cool thing, you know, like, you're like a pioneer. And then there's other people who do things DIY because they're broke and like can't afford a lot of the fancy resources that make your zines look really good. I'm not talking about anyone, no. I'm sorry, I've gone to so many zine fests, and then like, you know, people like kind of sneer, you know, at my zines or other people's zines because they're just like Xeroxed, or they're just made out of shitty printer paper, and then the other people have their art books that are like $30 and they're really glossy, and they call themselves DIY, but like the difference is so clear. I think that that's another thing that I'm really interested in, is like, who gets to claim a certain like culture, like who gets to claim a certain significance, who gets to be really chic, and like who gets to be really trendy and like groundbreaking. And more often than not, it's like not people of color. But, you know, because it didn't serve this like highbrow, I guess like group of like tastemakers, you know, people who decide what's really cool, like who are often white people, I think like that's when we have to kind of question that. And I think that, you know, what you do is valuable, whether it's like, you know, a little cute floral bonnet with, I don't know, like a kitten screen printed on it or something, or, you know, or whether it's like a really crappy copy of a zine. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm curious about like who, if anybody, at like the present time, perceived as like a bully.
A bully?
You seem like you're pretty confident and stuff, and I wonder like you still feel that way about certain types of people. Or...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I definitely bear it all in like my middle school diaries, but I'm like, you know, not gonna like name names or anything. But I think that like bullying is a national problem. It is. But I think one thing that I've definitely thought about, especially in going back to like old diaries and like pulling up all this crap, is that I think that everyone has a bully in them. And I think that it's whether or not you choose to, you know, either hold it back or just like come to terms with the bully inside of you and be like, I don't want to be this person. Like, you know, it's in there, but I just don't want to be this person. So I don't think like, I mean, yeah, there are bullies, but they're like, I think everyone has the capacity to be one. And there are some people who are just bullies forever and they love it, and that's them. That's what they bring to the world. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, is it like represented with the image, like police officers, or like?
Oh yeah, they're bullies for hire, for pay. Police are like paid to be bullies, in my opinion.
And do you feel like as you just continue to grow mentally and physically, you just start to ignore it and just leave it behind? Is that accurate?
I think eventually, I don't know. Some people, they keep the same coping mechanisms they always keep. And I deal with things differently now. When I was a kid, I grew up in a really combative, like, violent household. And when I was a kid, I was constantly in detention because I would get into fistfights with my bullies, even though they were, like, this big and I was, like, this little. And I'm like, ugh. You know, like, that's how I used to deal with it. I would be, you know, and eventually it, like, devolved into self-harm. And eventually I had to be like, okay, you know what? Like, yes, this person is acting completely unreasonable, but let me think of whether there's like a bigger reason they're acting totally unreasonable, you know, and I started having those like internal dialogues, I guess, with myself, talking to myself about it, and really focusing on like thinking less about that person's a bully and think about like, why is that person a bully, you know? Any other questions? Anyone have any embarrassing stories or like things that you just want to let go of? What was middle school like for you? Do you want to talk about it? Do you have feelings?
Yeah.
You don't have to, but you know, I'm listening.
I have a story that I've never really even like thought about, just because like there's no appropriate context to like revisit it. But then like with the stuff you're reading from Razine, that was an appropriate time, because in middle school I remember like my parents always like wanted me, or still, to be like very clean and presentable, but like I could express myself however I wanted to as long as I was clean.
Yeah. Cool.
Because, right? But like all my friends had written all their favorite bands on their backpack with like Sharpie, and I had my like new backpack, and I was like, really like no one's gonna know that like the bands I like, so no one's gonna be my friend that I want.
True though.
Yeah.
It's
So
true.
I, like, show the bands to, like, so I remember like talking to my parents about it. Like, also another thing, like feeling like you still want your like parents' approval, even though you like want to do what you want. Like for some reason, like you want to identify with your parents, maybe like because you're like, you feel like you don't fully identify with the people around you. Like, because I'm Colombian, so I felt like maybe like, I don't know, whatever. I feel like maybe like just not being just basic white.
Every
standard white
disappointment
person.
sets
Yeah.
you further apart from not just your family, but like your identity.
Yeah, so like, I feel like I still needed their approval. So I remember
Yeah.
like asking them if I could draw on my backpack and like crying because like I was like, and then they let me write like my favorite bands on my bag.
Wow.
So what did you write?
I don't know, Nirvana and like, you know, shit like that. Like basically middle school bands that you like that are actually.
Well, thank you. Yeah, of course.
Do you feel like you're encountered with people? So, you know, we can identify with the abnormality posers, for example, but do people actively call you out for not being Latina?
Oh yeah. And you know who likes to do it the most? White people. When I'm like, wow, that was really racist of you, and they're like, well, you're like pretty much white. But then, conveniently enough, when they need a token brown friend, they're like, oh yeah, my Cuban friend Suzy is like really cool. Here, you should meet her. You're both Latin. Or no, you're both Hispanic. You should be friends. It's funny. It works. It works both ways. But yeah, I found most often when people want to discredit my opinions on something, or when they want to discredit me when I call them out for doing or saying something like terrible, then they'll be like, well, you look white to me. And I'll just be like, I don't even know what that means. And I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? I knew you grew up in like New England frickin' woods surrounded by other white people who look just like, and eat potatoes. So I'm just thinking, like, what's your frame of reference here? Is it because I don't look like, I don't know, fucking, Jennifer Lopez? And, like, I'm not Latina, or oh God. What was really funny, which was a constant source of, like, frustration, was in high school. So in high school, I had a group of friends, and we called ourselves the Latina Mafia, because we were like, there were like 5 Latina girls when I went to high school. There was like 5 of us, among hundreds of students. But yeah, we hung out together at lunch sometimes, and it was really funny because we'd like make Scarface jokes, and then like some kids were like really bothered by it. They were like, "Oh my God! Like I heard she carries a knife." And like so they spread rumors about us, and like they said all these weird things. One of them, well, no, never mind. I'm gonna go into that. But everyone would like. It was so funny. Everyone called me Selena, and I would keep telling them, like, no. Like, I don't even look like Selena. They'd be like, you look just like Selena. I'd be like, on what planet do you live on? And then I got into an argument with someone in my Spanish class, and she was like, well, all Latin people like look the same anyway. And I was like, no, we don't. Have you seen me and like my friend Lexi or like my friend Ricia? We look totally different. And then she's like, well, you're a little bit different. I think that you just like really, it's like the shittiest thing. One of the shittiest things. But she was like, well, you don't look like a TV Latina. And I think that you maybe say it because you really like the attention. And I was like, oh. Well, bitch. And then actually, what was really funny is that this girl also, we had like a food contest the following week, and we both made flan. And then everyone had to vote for the best flan. And then I made the flan myself. Okay, she made it out of a box, but she was like, my flan should win, it's the best flan, clearly, and she was like a theater kid, and like all her friends were theater kids, and they were like, yeah, she's gotta win the best flan, and then everyone was like, and then actually it was kind of funny, it was like so validating after they like said this to me, when actually like everyone else in my class kind of piped up, and they were like, girl, you don't even know how to make a flan, like, and they were like, she actually knows how to do it, and you know what, hers is better. And she's like, what? Like, you're just saying that because she's Latina. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I wasn't. And then like, just devolved into this thing. I'm sorry, I'm rambling again. But I often think that these tests for authenticity are a way of like disarming people. Mm-hmm. They're a way of cutting down someone's confidence. It's like if you just have your chin held up a little too high, I'm going to bring it back down and just tell you that your entire life is a lie.
And here's one more thing I never thought about this until you brought it up. But like, for example, me growing up in a predominantly white suburb of North Shore Chicago, I never thought about the word authenticity until I had the privilege of going to school.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of going to college. And so what are some of like your recommendations for kind of the kids that are maybe like 6 years younger than us that are having all the same feelings but don't necessarily have the vocabulary or basically the vocabulary to like identify with that?
That's a really good question, and since I've like started doing zines and like writing and drawing for Rookie, like a lot of people who follow my blog now, most of them are like they're like not in, they're either under the age of 21 or like a lot of them are still in high school. And I'm kind of like, how do you guys even live on Reddit? I'm thinking like, but I've actually come down a lot since college because for a while I was like, in college I just like loved the word like, hegemony. I really loved like, thinking of another one. Normativity. I mean, I still use that one because it's useful. But I think like, it's just, I don't know. I think of how I needed things to be explained to me, really. And I really love like, I love comparisons to like pop culture things. When I work at rock camp, I sometimes am like, well, imagine, or no, not even imagine. I'm like, well, actually, okay, here's an example. So I coached a band of 13-year-old girls at this past summer's rock camp, and they really wanted their look to be tribal. And they were like, yeah, we should wear feathers and like war paint. And they're having this discussion, and I'm just sitting there like, and I just keep making the face, and I'm like, until they finally notice, they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, think of it this way. There's this, like, I was like, how, do you have anything that, like, you do with your family? Or do you have anything that you really, really, like, love, and it's, like, this thing that you have just always done, and then somebody who, like, has never, ever, like, done it before, and, like, doesn't know anything about it, and isn't part of your family, or, or whatever, they take it, and then they completely butcher it, I was like, imagine how upset you would feel. So I asked them, I was like, well, what's something that you all love? And then a girl was like, well, I really like fashion. And I was like, how do you feel when somebody shows up like wearing the same things that you're wearing all of a sudden, and you know that they didn't put as much thought into that? And she's like, it makes me mad because I do so much work. Like I design my clothes, and like, or I look them up and stuff, and I know exactly what I want, and everything is like, it has to be perfect. And I'm like, yeah, so you're not a Native American, or you're not indigenous, and so you think this thing looks really cool, and suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I want to look really cool with it too, but you don't know what it means, and that's like really disrespectful, and people might be similarly offended the way that I know it's not the best like analogy, but I was like, look, you'd be super offended if someone took this thing that you put in a lot of like work and like care into, and just kind of like half-assed it. I use that word with them because please, like, kids say ass all the time. But yeah, I was like, oh, it would be so offensive to you, and maybe you shouldn't do it. And then they were like, damn, yeah, we would be really mad. Let's not do that. And it was like as easy as that. That's all it took. And I think it's just like a lot of it, and especially like being in academia, it's so exhausting. And oftentimes and also the thing is I'm basically like a valley girl. Like I'm from Florida. I grew up near the beach and like top. So I talk like this and constantly in academia, and it was like a huge awakening for me when I had my first like feminist theory class. It was terrible. Everyone was like terrible to me and like some other people who just like had never heard of these things before. A lot of them also grew up in affluent communities where they had better educations. A lot of people I went to school with went to private school, and like their education was, I guess, light years ahead of my public school education in Florida. And lots of people like talked down to me, and I think they kind of forgot what it was like not being familiar with something. And the thing with especially explaining it to younger people, is that you can't treat them like, I mean, yeah, they can be ignorant, they can be uninformed, but it doesn't make them, dumb, which is, I think, what a lot of them are afraid of, when they, when they make a mistake or something, or they like want to know, or they want to act like they know what they're talking about and they know everything. But I think another part of like explaining these things to them is that it's totally okay not to know everything. It's totally okay to be completely unfamiliar. It's another component to like the authenticity debate is like, being unfamiliar with something is not the worst thing that you could be, I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
I had a thought, like thinking back to what you were talking about with like sort of omission and sort of your, or maybe like one of the sources of like kind of the confusion that like your middle school years kind of like led you to, and sort of like your family like leaving out certain parts. And so I'm sort of curious about like what you would think about telling your own story and like parts that you might feel, like so in my background, like I come from like really rural Michigan and it's like all white people. And there, like in my background, there's a lot of people that are in my family that kind of have like a lot of like intolerance and like not just ignorance, but like pretty overt,
hostility.
Yeah. And so I feel sometimes like in telling my story to like omit parts of these that aren't necessarily like things, like they are members of my family, but I really don't understand or like identify with them culturally. And so in the same way that like you kind of felt left out, or you felt kind of disconnected because your family had omitted certain details, I'm often like inclined to wanting to omit like the kind of backwater side of my family. But then I also kind of feel like that's not really, like I feel really uncertain about how to handle that, I guess, and I'm just curious like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially with writing, or at least committing a lot of my experiences with my family to paper, I still like wrestle with it, and my mom knows that I've like written about her. And she won't read it out of respect to me, but she knows that it's out there. And the thing is, before I like published my first Perzine where I talk about abuse, like I just told her, I was like, you know what, you have hurt me in like so many different ways. And I was just like pretty honest with her, and I was like, I need to talk about them through writing, and I'm doing this thing, And she was like, I won't read it if you don't want me to, which is actually way more respectful than I even expected from her. I expected her to kind of flip her shit and be like, you're writing about me? What do you have to write? Like the first time that my parents found my diary, they were like super pissed off that I thought all these things, but like it's not just things that I thought. I was actively writing about things that they did, things that they said. And children have like this amazing propensity to know, I mean, they might miss some things, but they are generally pretty observant and are not like, most of them are not yet like, I guess, overloaded with like all of the shitty hatred in this world yet. So I think that's another reason why I really enjoy my journals, is just because I did see things like actually much more clearly, whereas now I'm super conflicted about writing about my family still, because it's like I want to belong to them in some way, but in doing that I also have to come to terms with a lot of the demons that we all have, like as a family. And I think like, some people make conscious decisions to like cut people out of their lives, they make conscious decisions to completely leave their families. For me, like I was saying earlier, it feels like I'd be sacrificing like a huge part of like my identity if I suddenly like just lost contact with my family, as like terrible as they are. There's like still I'm trying to hang on to like any semblance of home, I guess. And I'm guessing that's kind of where you're at as well.
Yeah, I think. Well, so like you were talking about, in one of your journals, you like mentioned like your super Anglo stepdad or something, who then like when you were talking about like your life like now, you mentioned that your mom's side of the family is really chill.
Yeah.
And so like I sort of like wonder then like if it's something like that like maybe it just seems like at the time obviously he was like really not what the rest of you felt like. But now I don't know if it's that's the kind of thing that makes it into like the telling of your own stories, like where he would have like maybe contributed, even though he's kind of typically like disappointing or like not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of ways. Like, there's still things that she does, but actually, when we were growing up, she didn't make a point to like instill a lot of things about her family and her heritage into like me and my siblings, and more so with my stepdad and my little brothers who my mom had with him, and they're growing up completely American. My mom is not really teaching them anything at all, and that is kind of heartbreaking. Just because I feel like, I don't know, I feel obligated to pass something on to like future generations of, goth mixed kids. I don't know. But
Do you feel like your mom's Americanization is something that you would like be inclined to like consider omitting in the same way that like maybe like your great grandfather who was Chinese or something, maybe the family at the time like also like that was like I don't know.
I wouldn't. It's like the thing is that, and that's another reason why I'm identifying more with like just being part of a diaspora. It's kind of like I'm part of this like migration of people. I'm not part of a particular fixed place, but I'm part of a legacy of people who have like gone from place to place and kind of collected these like these components of their heritage. And because I see that in my mom, like she's not statically Louisian, now she's an American citizen and is definitely like, she votes Republican? Or I don't know if she votes. But anyway, but no, we clash because and it's the same thing with my dad, who's also like really gung-ho, like Tea Party Republican. Because Cubans, like, especially a lot of Cubans in Miami are like fucking so anti-communist that they went to the fucking Tea Party, because it's like the extreme opposite. Because of like what happened in Cuba, because everyone, lots of people got killed or whatever. So then you become a libertarian. Yeah. But yeah, there's things like that. And I see my parents, and the thing is I've seen them as they've grown as adults, and as I've grown as an adult, is that their culture is also not fixed, as mine isn't, because they are also part of that diaspora. So I'm thinking, and that's why, I'm sorry, this is like so like scattered, but this is how my head is right now about, specifically about like race and ethnicity, is like, can we really tie an identity to a fixed place? Who has the luxury to do that? I don't know. I definitely didn't. I mean, my family moved a lot because of like economics and not being able to find work in certain places, and have gone through periods of like unemployment because someone got, fired after, my mom got fired after reporting an incident of like racist harassment, and things like that happen. And so we have like, we move from place to place, and we kind of collect these things on the way, and then we change as people, and it's, I'm not gonna try and like pretend that I'm like full authentic Cuban who like eats pork sandwiches all the time.
Wait,
Yeah.
can I just say, sorry, can I just interrupt this for a second? Can we just have one last question, and then we can back up? Sorry, no, but you can go.
It's just like, it's not just missing culture or like missing like something behind you, but it's a hegemonic, predominant white culture managing all the knowledge everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's part of your culture, doesn't it? Part of you that that this is right for you, but it's not acceptable in one society because it's not part of the knowledge. So this is the big hole about this. We don't want to back up and say I'm nigger, I'm black, I'm from this or that. No, but it's a balance of knowledge you know that you need to rescue of that in this, in this world.
Yeah.
And in U.S., it's based like on this kind of education. All this pattern of education is right. That in close in this mentality. So we can have books, but we're not part of that. You know.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing.
Which is why I love the internet. No, I mean, I think like we should be creating our own knowledge and speaking our own truths, which is why, you know, I blog and why I zine thing. Zine. Is that a verb? To zine. Ziniad. Yeah, I don't know. No, I think that's super important, and you gotta accept even the ugly parts sometimes. And I think even accepting the ugly parts that you don't really you wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole is actually very necessary sometimes, just to grow as a person and to also just as an example of what you don't want to do. When something bad happens, I'm like, I don't want that to happen again, or I don't want to be that person who does that. So I won't. I'll just keep it in my memory banks or write it down. I don't know.
We can have one last question.
Any last word? Hey, how you doing?
So I know you more from the context of like front person in Shady Hawkins and everything.
I sing.
Right. I guess kind of bringing that up and just like dabbling on like some of the things that we're talking about. Like, do you find that like that role as like a front person of a band is like an evolution of like some of these writings and some of these outlets? Do you find that like you are like addressing similar things, or do you use that for like a different voice? And then I guess also to like, what are some of the like trials, tribulations, conflicts that like come along with like maybe that identity, and like how those parallel with like maybe some of the stuff you've been talking about?
Yeah. Lately I've been raging a lot on the internet because, like I do, because I think something that, I guess, I don't even know if we can call like punk a community. I think it's like a series of communities. It's like a bunch of different communities. And you could say that with a lot of different subcultures. But I think it happens time and time again where I find people of color being erased from scenes, from scene reports, you know, or people writing like fanzines about bands, and they're always full of like white dudes, or even full of white cis women, and they get all the airplay, they get people offering to like put out the records, and put out the tapes and things like that, and then, you know, and I go to a show, and I've seen, you know, bands of people of color, and white people look super disinterested. I've dealt with like singing, and I have like a mixture of songs. I have some like heartbreak songs, like, you know, kind of, I don't know, I'd say they're kind of poppy in the way that like, I'm not gonna go there. I was like, they're kind of poppy in a really like messed up Courtney Love way, but no. But, you know, I have songs that are really confrontational because I think I need that outlet, and I'm doing a little bit, well, no, that's not true. I was like, I'm not doing as many angry songs, but that's not true. I think I'm having a different kind of, maybe actually more of my songs have expressed disappointment than anything else. It's just disappointment. When I started out, my main feeling was rage, you know, and I was like, everyone's really mad, we're gonna get pumped, you know, I'm gonna go up here and like sing all these, oh my god, I'm like talking like Fred Durst. Yeah, so I did it all for the nookie, and that's that. No, okay, I'm sorry, I'm such a jerk. Anyway, so I have felt an evolution in the things that I've written music about, but lately I've been writing a lot more about disappointments in supposed communities of people that have just kind of, they may not have like turned me away the way that some people have been turned away in punk, but I definitely, it like makes me want to leave. It just, and before I was making punk music, I actually was singing in like bluegrass and folk bands. Yeah. The secret life. Yeah. So I had a hippie phase, but that's been like my direction lately, and I've been raging a lot on the internet because I find so much credit being given. I'm finding more women involved in music than I'd ever seen before, especially more women involved in punk. And that's exciting because when I really needed it, like it wasn't really there. Like when I was like 12, 13, all I had was the radio. I wasn't allowed to go to shows. My mom wouldn't let me go to Warped Tour. Like, are you kidding me? She just like laughed and was like, yeah, like I'm gonna let you go and smoke pot with your friends and your bands. No. No, I really needed that, and I get so excited when I see like people that I know like gaining traction and like. But one thing that has like definitely stuck out to me is that apparently punk is getting more feminist, but like the faces are all white and they're all friends with each other, and they have like these really cute friendships, and everyone knows about them. And that's like, I feel like that's being presented as this like important thing, but for me personally, I'm like, I don't know, man. White women have been really nasty to me, and they continue to be. And I've heard people who make amazing music, but I guess we're not like trendy enough. I see that happening, and that's been my frustration lately with punk as it is. Although I have a lot of like good friends who are also in bands who like get that, and have definitely been really supportive. And I think one thing I like is how supportive people are, but I also find that oftentimes that support is very selective.
Yeah, we're not pulling each other up.
No, we're not. I think like, yeah. And for me, I mean, I'm just gonna keep doing. I wrote this really sad post on Tumblr the other day where I was like, or it wasn't even sad. I thought it was kind of funny, but then it came off as kind of sad when people are like, but I like you, and I'm like, no, I didn't mean it like that. Where I was like, God, I feel like right now, like. Everyone's favorites in punk right now are these like white women who I always wanted to look like, and who have these really like nice soft voices, like, but they basically sing it like over like punk tracks, and they're just like very conventionally gorgeous, and they like, they're getting so much coverage, and everybody loves them, and like I love them. Some of them are my friends, but it's also like. I see that happening where I see over and over again, like, new girl band, and they're all white, and I know so many fucking killer girl bands that are, full of like black and brown women, and like, I don't know, I don't know what the deal is, punks, get it together. Okay? No, seriously, that's been like super disappointing for me, and I don't feel like, me, like I said, I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep being this, like, bratty, abrasive girl who's going to say all this shit that nobody wants to say. I took this quiz yesterday on BuzzFeed. I took the quiz that was like, which rapper are you? And it was like, you're Kanye. And I was like, oh, god damn it. And I was like, oh, no, wait. No, this makes sense. Because I say all the shit that like nobody else will say, so I'm like the sacrificial lamb. So like because people know that I can't control myself, I'm gonna like spew diarrhea out from my mouth and say all the shit that people have like wanted to say for a while. And one of those things was about like all the white faces in punk, and I like I was like, actually, I was pretty specific with like some of the publications that I've been reading who like are just like, they're white supremacists. You know, they may not be wearing like Klan hoods, but like, but still, I mean, they facilitate the control of white people over an entire culture. And that to me is a form of supremacy. And I mean, we could talk about, I guess, the significance of that word or like the context of white supremacy as we know it. But I think that I'm seeing that a lot, and that's something that I'm wrestling with. And I don't know.
Was it? I think he commented. This is again back to Tumblr, but there was like some website that like had like a list of like 2013 is the year of women in punk, and it was every.
The noisy.
Yeah, that's what it was. And like
Yeah.
it was all white women and
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I wrote that. And then he added Miley Cyrus to the end of the list. I was like, she's not punk. I had like an Avril Lavigne moment, like, she is not punk. But no, like, so this like, this total like poo face dude who identifies as like jaded punk, like, you know, white bro dude, wrote this list, and I bet he thought he was being really like conscious and like really aware. But he wrote this list, and it was like, he was like, sorry guys, girls won at punk this year, and he was like, there are so many girls in punk. Who knew? Like it was some weird fucking thing, and I'm just like, yeah. And so he lists all like it was this like lovely gallery of some people who I'm friends with, and they're good songwriters. But at the same time, I don't listen to their music. I mean, I can like them as people, but I just don't like their music. But there was like a lot, like there were people I knew, and then there were other people who like, yeah, sure, I can understand, but at the same time, I'm thinking of so many people who were like overlooked, who have definitely made some like prolific music last year, and just like were, you know, cast aside, or like not even, maybe this guy never heard of them, you know, maybe he never heard of In School, maybe he never heard of Permanent Ruin, like, maybe, you know, I'm sure that he hadn't heard about it, but then I think about it, and I'm kind of like, well, if they made the effort to look for these people, then they would find them. The thing is that people just don't want to make the effort, and they would rather stick to what's like comfortable. And I can't say like, I can't act like I haven't been guilty of just sticking to what's been comfortable. But after a while, you know, if you're going to speak for a community or like represent a community in some way, you got to make sure that you're well aware of like what's happening in that community. And some people are just out of touch anymore.